There is a small cellar beneath the stairs at my grandfather's home. The door features 4 deadbolts and a frightening lock, the key to which was kept in a secret location that only my grandfather knew. When I was younger, my older cousins would tell me scary stories about what was in the cellar beyond, and I would always wonder why its contents were so carefully guarded. In retrospect, I don't believe their invented tales of jinns and ghouls could ever fully capture the horror of what was actually behind that door. I recall my initial impression of the door, or more accurately, my initial fascination with it. Every summer I went there, it was always there, unchanged and meaningless to me while I played around with my cousins, making perfumes from the garden's flowers and cupboard spices, and getting up to the general mischief that comes with growing up. I was 7 years old. The door towered over me, a threatening wall that was only 6 feet high, but appeared much bigger when I was younger. In addition to the lock, there had only been 1 deadbolt back then. As she counted to 100, I could hear my favorite cousin's voice. I could also hear the other children running around looking for somewhere to hide. I could have imagined a variety of fascinating things that might have been hiding in the cellar. In all the hide-and-seek games I played, not a single one of my cousins ever appeared to hide there, suggesting that it was also a decent hiding site. Grabbed the deadbolt, gently undid it while making as little noise as I could, which was surprisingly minimal, and then I peered at the lock, the final barrier. It appeared as though the deadbolt had been heavily lubricated to reduce noise. I pulled at it, but it was useless. It was securely locked. My 7-year-old self had a wonderful idea at that very moment. I had seen, in some espionage movie whose name I can't even remember anymore, the heroine picking a lock with her hairpin. I reached up, meanwhile, to my hair and loosened a bobby pin from the untidy tangle that arose from rolling around in the garden and racing about. I put the bobby pin in there, not exactly knowing what I was doing, but determined to do something, propelled by the adrenaline that seemed to fill me up with each passing number my cousin counted. 64, 55, 56. I kept moving the bobby pin around after hearing something click inside. The numbers 68, 69, 70. I attempted to slide the bobby pin into the lock again, but it remained stuck. If an adult witnessed me doing this, I would be caught by my cousin and face consequences. 90, 90, 91. Another click sounded, and I watched in awe as the lock silently opened after I gave it another vigorous jiggle, in the vain hope that I would at least get my bobby pin out of the way. I stared at the door, catching it before it touched the floor. Now it was open. I just had to turn the knob by reaching up. My fingers hesitated as my hand crept upward. 99, 98. With my wrist ready to spin, I held onto the knob. 100. I jumped when a big hand fell over mine. My grandpa's aged face, which was always adorned with a smile, was suddenly carved into a frown when I looked up. My cousin's footsteps as she scampered around, searching for everyone who could be hiding. The throbbing sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. The anxiety of being discovered. As I became acutely aware of everything, I noticed that my grandpa didn't appear upset or even dissatisfied when I gazed into his eyes. He simply had such a dejected expression. He put the deadbolt into position after carefully prying my hand from the doorknob. After removing the lock from my grasp and repositioning the bobby pin, he snapped the lock back onto the door. The squeals and laughter of my cousins being located filled the air as I glanced down at my feet. Taking me by the arm, my grandfather showed me his bedroom, which had been moved to the ground level when he started having problems climbing the stairs last year. Even though he and Grandma continued to do everything together, she preferred sleeping on their old mattress over the orthopedic bed that Grandpa was now forced to use. He sat in front of me on his small coffee table and seated me on the bed. "Chair." With a strange sense of despair in his voice, he called my name. "You're not allowed in the cellar, are you?" I gazed at his dejected expression and even more dejected eyes. But why, was the one question that tore at my tongue. "There are some dangerous tools in there, Cher," he said with a sigh and a touch on my knee. "It's possible that you or one of your cousins will suffer harm." I was determined to see what was within, so I said, "Will you not accompany me? All I want to do is watch. I swear not to touch anything." Though it didn't light up his eyes as much as his other grins, he still managed to smile lightly. "I'm afraid not, sweetie." When I went out to the garden with the other cousins the next morning, I saw that the lock I had chosen the other day had been changed with a more threatening one, and that the door now had 4 deadbolts, each with its own lock. I never made another attempt to enter. I was the only grandchild living close by, so my grandma asked if I could come and help clean up after my grandpa passed away a few weeks earlier. Naturally, I came over the following day. She missed Grandpa a lot, and every time she passed his room, she was reminded painfully that the man she had lived 55 years with was no longer there. When I was told of Grandpa's death, I grieved for hours. I believe I cried myself dry, as all I could feel now was a resounding melancholy that seemed to cover everything. I questioned whether the pain would always be this strong, but I was quite relieved that I could stop crying because it would affect my work and my life in general. I gave my grandmother a hug and a forehead kiss. Since the funeral, a modest event that most of my relatives was unable to attend because of travel limitations, I hadn't seen her in around a week. I was alone since my uncle, who lives nearby, was supposed to come over and help, but his wife went into labor. "Hi, Grandma," grinning at her, I said. I was happy that she looked a little better than she had during the burial. "Rin." "Hello, my dear," she said with a small grin in return and a pat on my hand. "I hope asking you to stop by isn't too much hassle. It's simply, sorting out the boxes has been difficult for me because I am unable to lift anything heavy." She sounded remorseful, even hesitant. My grandmother was a stubborn individual who disliked seeking assistance. "Grandma, it's not a problem at all. I'll begin working on his bedroom." 2 hours had passed since then. I was seated on the bedroom floor, surrounded by a variety of books, old paperwork, and stray pages. The scent of dust, mingled with my grandfather's fragrance, filled the air. I discovered a tiny ceramic urn while going through one of the boxes that had been in the closet. It was exquisitely ornamented with vibrant hues and meticulously rendered dancers. Since I had never seen it before, I questioned why my grandfather would conceal something so lovely. I removed the cover and looked inside. I could see the clear gleam of something metallic there, hidden beneath confectionery that had long since gone bad. I dug in and pulled out a set of keys. Though they were all quite dull, they all had a brassy tint, with one being slightly larger than the others. After staring at them for a while, wondering what they could possibly open, I shrugged and put them in my jeans pocket. I kept going through everything in the boxes, stacking things into piles that I would either retain or discard. I kept items I wanted to ask Grandma about and wasn't sure whether to discard in a different pile. I had cleaned the chest of drawers and the closet in the 4 hours since I had come. His old clothing was in 3 bags, which I hauled out and put aside to donate to the thrift shop down the street. One small bag was for me to keep, while the other 2 were going to the garbage. Memorabilia from my time with my grandfather, photos of me and my cousins as children, and DVDs labeled with the years and events: Jay's middle school graduation in 2011, BBQ 2009, and Lynn's 6th birthday in 2004. My grandfather's old camcorder caught these priceless moments of happiness and laughing. I saw the cellar door as I was making my way back inside to get another filled bag. I'd just dismissed it as a storage room and hadn't thought about it in years. I went up to it and attempted to pry it open. Locked, naturally. The large lock dangling mockingly, all the deadbolts in place and locked in. The keys in my pocket came back to me. With my heart pounding, I took them out and held them up. Was this it? Would I ever get to see what was behind the door that I had dreamed about since I was a child? I listened carefully and glanced over my shoulder. In the utter quiet of the house, I could hear the TV while Grandma was in the living room upstairs. I tried this with nothing to lose. I turned after inserting one of the smaller keys into a deadbolt lock. Nothing. I made another attempt. Click. After the lock opened, I put it in my pocket. I slid the other 3 deadbolts open, one after the other. After doing the same, To make sure my grandma wasn't coming down the stairs, I briefly froze. I gazed at the constantly smiling object to my left, the scenery speeding past behind his head. My old partner's large, unblinking eyes were still fixed on me. I slumped in my chair, becoming more and more distant from him and this whole mess. "Where are you?" "Evelyn, I am right here. However, you're in the car with me right now. It's you, or it might have been you. What is this object I've been driving alongside for hours if you're the one on the other end of the call?" My brain was unable to process what was going on. I required an explanation. "Evelyn, tell me what's going on." Even though Richard's voice sounded distant, hearing it at last helped to soothe me. On certain nights at home, right before bed, Richard would strike up a discussion on a big life issue, such as starting a family or purchasing a new home, and we would sit up for hours listening to each other talk. While stuck in this car, I missed hearing his voice. I was taunted by the smiling thing's deafening quiet. I closed my eyes and did my best to explain the situation to Richard. "You are seated beside me in the vehicle. Maybe it's not you, but it's you. How could it be you? The body in the driver's seat is not moving or speaking while you are on the phone. You've been looking at me for a while now with a strange smile on your face. How long I've been in this car is unknown to me. I'm stuck and I can't make you turn away, speak, or do anything. I ended up back in the car after attempting to leap out. I recall the minutes before I hit the asphalt, wanting to survive yet willing to die in order to get away. That may sound crazy, but it's the reality. I'm confined. The idea of being trapped with this quiet, smiling demon forever made my voice begin to falter. Please, help me. How do you feel about all of this?" The absurd question caught me off guard and I sat up in my chair. "Richard, what the fuck? What do you suppose my emotions are? It's all too supernatural, but perhaps this is some cruel joke. I'm not sure. Perhaps I've already passed on, or perhaps I'm receiving punishment for something. There is no way that this is real. Thus, this phone call isn't genuine at all." Even though I was being punished, hearing Richard's voice gave me some hazy comfort, so I thought about hanging up the phone. "You claim that you believe you are being punished." I became frustrated and tugged at my hair. My lost mind must have created this entire exchange with the phony Richard, because my mind was no longer mine. Continuing the chat was pointless, but what else could I do at this point? Well, I've read enough scary tales to be familiar with this situation. I'm stuck in this hell world that seems to go on forever. Evelyn, think, have you committed any offenses that call for punishment? And I awaited their next words, begging. "Why are you questioning me like this? Why?" I begged. "Help me get out of here. You may or may not be my Richard, but please, whatever you are. Since waking up to this smiling monster, I have been unable to get in touch with anyone. We're swerving around other vehicles and haven't stopped for gas yet. This is absurd, and I simply want to get out. Please, please." "Evelyn, I'm attempting to assist you. Breathe deeply and consider the question." I thought about the nameless voice on the other end of the call and its serene questions as I gazed out the windshield at the painted highway lines that were speeding at us and vanishing beneath the automobile. "Is there anything that justifies punishing me?" my mother asked. "Is there anything that justifies punishing me?" Smith. I shut my eyes. Breathe slowly via my nose. Exhale slowly through your pursed lips. Imagine attempting to list all of your life's faults if you were put in that situation. Does the mind remember every error? We grow and change as a result of our mistakes. Maybe remorse is a contributing role. But eventually we let go. We overlook it. I begin with my most recent recollection. Must be here because of something that happened not long ago. Has anyone been harmed by me? Laws broken? No. A typical existence. I do my best to avoid offending anyone. I might even be referred to as meek, a sham. I could tip a little extra at restaurants and use fewer disposable bags. Nothing worthy of this captivity, this kidnapping, and the broken man next to me with the broken smile. "Evelyn, are you still with me?" "Yes, and I'm at a loss for ideas. Nothing I've done has earned this." I'm positive. All right, that's excellent. If you're certain, could you describe what you observe outside the car? As we raced along the endless highway, I surveyed the terrain once more. There was only a swirl of different shades of green beyond the dark lines where the asphalt met the shoulder. It's a woodland. No animals, exits off the highway, or signs have caught my attention. I can't seem to attract anyone's attention, even if there are other cars. I let out a sigh. Richard, there is no chance. I've probably gone crazy, so I'm still not sure whether you're real, but I don't think I'll ever be able to escape this. I now live this life. It's a difficult reality to face. No, Evelyn, you don't live this life. Both of us have put in too much effort for this. Listen to me, Evelyn. Take another look. What do you see? I have no idea what you're looking for from me. Just you, me, the highway, the forest, this car, and other people driving around us in other cars. People who refuse to give me any goddamn attention. Richard sighed, and I heard it. It was the type of sigh he used to try to control his anger toward me. All right. Ignore the outside world. Shut your eyes and share your most treasured memories with me. What? Your most treasured memory. The scene that is most meaningful to you. The moment that is constantly on your mind. I couldn't see how this would be helpful, but I had already answered these questions and come thus far. I shut my eyes once more. The vision of the frozen creature next to me, its white teeth glistening and its lips parched, was a scorching image that was difficult to push away. As I searched for something joyful, my face twisted and my stomach wrenched. All I could recall was our vehicle. I'm not sure. You're capable. Evelyn, I'm certain it's in there. You need to show them how to work it, I said. A flash. Potato salad in my hair, bright sunshine, and laughs. What are you contemplating? I described the picnic that was taking shape in my head to the voice on the phone. I could count the freckles on Richard's nose as his face, the real Richard, came into view. I placed my hand on his knee. I was laughing when he lifted his camera and took a picture of me. We were close to the bay, in a park along the water. 3 years ago, my brother got married. At the lighthouse, there were the walking dogs and the couples holding hands. In the distance, kids were running barefoot across the warm grass, playing tag. All right, continue. It was pleasant to recall. My face felt warm from the sun. There were no clouds in the sky. Our blanket had a frisbee on it, but we never got up to play. And that was all right. We brought an excessive amount of food. We discussed getting a dog. We discussed the wedding, the house, and the children we would have. A calm smile spread across my lips. How recently have I smiled? Evelyn, you've found the location. Where? Dreamily, I asked. I wasn't prepared to return to the agony of the here and now. I sat up. Your secure location, that's just where I need you. What need me to be? That's correct, you're ready now. I desire that you murder him. My brain changed. It seemed as though my body and brain were no longer in the same space and were instead in 2 separate locations. What, I muttered? Kill Richard. As soon as possible before you both get up to go. Is there anything nearby that you might use as a weapon? I took a look around. The grass blades were languidly waving in the mild breeze as we sat on the picnic blanket. The sun glinted on something silver. Like the Arthurian sword in the stone, the cheese knife we brought sank deep into a block of cheddar. I slid my fingers around the handle without any thought. Kill him, Richard's voice rang softly in my ear. Indeed, it was logical. To get away, I had to kill him. My joyful moment would always be marred. But in order for me to be free at last, it had to be destroyed. I glanced up to Richard's face instead of the knife. Love and affection had vanished from his face. He was grinning, but my goodness, it was that evil, never-ending smile once more. I had created a secure place, but the terror had come in. There were tears in Richard's eyes now. I opened my eyes. We were back in the car. My lost driver's neck turned toward me at a perfect 90-degree angle, his hands grabbing the steering wheel. My right hand was in my lap, and I was twisted at the waist. The knife was in my hand. I raised my arm involuntarily, or so it appeared. I scowled. This was illogical. I was unable to do it. "He isn't who you believe." "Kill it," said the voice. The words rushed into my bloodstream. I tightened my hold on the knife. It made my knuckles white. I clenched my jaw and focused my eyes. I knew just where I should attack. I apologize. I pierced the pristine white wall of teeth with the cold, cutting metal. I retreated. First left, then right, I swung forward into the green, vacuous eyes. I retreated. I drove the steel deep into his chest, aiming for his heart, the heart I used to have. Crimson took across its whole face, but the ominous smile never wavered. I sobbed as I put my hand on its chest. "Evelyn, are you still present?" Now the voice was more distinct. I glanced at my red-stained, gleaming hands. "Evelyn!" I raised my head. The room became clear. When I moved my weight, the black faux leather chair I was strapped into made an uncomfortable creak. A few steps away was a man. I glanced at his white jacket's well-known name badge. Richard Amnes, M.D. He was grinning and staring directly into my eyes. He waited for an answer, leaning forward a little, and then he held my gaze, eyes glimmering with wet lungs. I looked directly into his. "Indeed, Richard, I'm present." With a little chuckle, he took a recorder out of his pocket. Richard carefully addressed the microphone. "Evelyn has completed Trial 1 successfully. Richard and I finally had 2 weeks off at the same time. How about we take a road trip, a random location that we haven't visited yet? What are your thoughts?" In order to overcome the impulse to spend our well-earned vacation time at home doing spring cleaning, I needed to leave just enough mystery for this notion to be compelling. "All right." As he considered his alternatives, Richard pursed his lips. He tended to choose more responsible ways to spend his time, while I was the one who was always on the go. I put on my most seductive smile and beseeching eyes. "Please hurry up. I swear that when we return, we will have all of the remaining time to thoroughly clean this place. How about all the way to Maine?" Then Richard smiled. 3 days later, we got the SUV packed and an Airbnb reserved. We hadn't been able to go on a trip like this together in such a long time. After deciding to go and investigate tiny seaside towns and activities, I spent the majority of the workday because I was determined to make the most of it. Google Maps showed that the travel would take little more than 7 hours. Even though we had a ton of games and podcasts prepared, I knew that on lengthy vehicle trips, I would give in to my need to slumber. The purr of the engine and the sound of tires on the highway have a calming effect on me. As anticipated, I dozed off around 4 hours in. I was awakened by a blasting horn, and I was able to establish the source by seeing a semi-trailer fly by my window. I rubbed my eyes. How much time was I absent? I tried to gauge the time by looking for the sun. I can't seem to locate the sun, even though I learned how to tell the time from the stars in Girl Scouts. It must be ready to set. I focused on my purse at my feet as my stomach rumbled. "Are you hungry?" As I searched for a food, I inquired. "I don't know how old these Mentos are, but that's all I have in here." "Will there soon be an exit?" "We can leave to get some food." I glanced back out my window, hoping to spot one of those enormous blue signs that name eateries or rest areas. "Pon? What are you—" I hadn't yet turned to face Richard. He was staring at me when I looked at him at that very moment. Exactly at me. Only his head was in a 90-degree position and he was grinning. I shrugged. "What?" A smirk crept to the corner of my mouth as I asked. We used to constantly play driver's chicken like this, but it didn't take long for my smile to fade. It wasn't chicken. Usually the driver would either give up after 5 seconds or look back at the road. Richard was not going to give up. "Look at the road, Richard," I quickly looked away from his unsettling smile and toward the road ahead. "You're traveling at 80 miles per hour. This isn't amusing. We will be slaughtered by you." A red Honda changed lanes directly in front of us, and I yelled. Richard managed to weave in and out of the car with ease. The entire time I was staring into his eyes. He hadn't looked away from me, not even slightly to the side, not to the rearview mirror, and not even out the front windshield. His smile never wavered as his gaze remained fixed on mine. His eyes were the most peculiar feature. They have always been my favorite thing about Richard. Eyelashes are absolutely long and the color is deep, mossy green. Now, though, they appeared darker in some way. It was only after a few moments that I realized it was his students. His iris was gradually being swallowed by them as they dilated and become darker. An hour has passed since then. He refused to glance back at the road no matter what I did. In an attempt to shake him out of whatever trance he was in, I tried turning his head, screaming, pleading, crying, and even slapping him once. He only moved when I attempted to take the wheel away from him. I'm not going to do that again. Richard never strikes anything or anyone, despite his refusal to glance at the road. I'm not sure if he will stop when we get to our vacation spot, so we're still traveling north. I'm not sure if he's still my Richard. I'm not sure whether I can call the police or if they'll believe me. Telling them that my husband, whose eyes are now all dark, won't stop driving the car and is only staring at me, will make me look crazy. I'm not sure, but maybe I should attempt that anyhow. But I do know one thing. Eventually, we'll run out of petrol. The gasoline gauge has been steadily rotating in smooth circles, seemingly emptying and then replenishing itself counterclockwise on an infinite loop, which surprised me because I figured we would have ran out of gas by now. I woke up into this living nightmare and haven't slept since. I haven't experienced fatigue. I haven't experienced hunger. Even though I don't usually feel the urge to go to the bathroom during lengthy car rides, I haven't felt the desire to do so. Richard's smile is all I can sense. His lips, which were larger than I had ever seen, curved up slightly above his teeth. By now we must have been on the road for hours. My mind and body are aware that it has been a while. I can feel the restlessness in my legs. Since waking up, it has been impossible to determine the time because the clock on the center console has been randomly rotating through numbers. Despite the fact that it is clearly daylight outside, I always fail to see the sun when I peek out the window. I attempted to phone the cops an hour ago. My phone's clock has vanished, or at least it seemed like an hour ago. I pressed the 911 key on the keypad. I waited for the call to end while holding my breath and looking sideways at Richard with the phone tight to my right ear. There was stillness for a few seconds, so I took the phone away to inspect the screen. Calling was written repeatedly by the ellipses on the display. The call was failing to connect. I tried again after hanging up. Nothing has changed. To check the service, I glanced at the top corner of my phone's screen. It said, "No service," with a small symbol next to it, rather than those little bars getting bigger, or 4G, or my phone carrier name. I narrowed my eyes in an attempt to see the outline. When I saw that the symbol was a smiling face emoticon, I gasped and hurled my phone to the ground. I attempted to roll down the window to have a better view of the outdoors about half an hour ago. Fresh air whipped across my face as the glass fell, and I maintained my finger on the button. To see if Richard would respond, I turned to face him again. All I saw was that smile, which I was growing more and more accustomed to. That terrible smile. All of my wrath and fear used to melt away when I looked into his face. Now, the huge smile and wide eyes made me angry and afraid. As the window lowered, I rested my free hand on it to feel the air. I saw that Richard's left hand was no longer on the wheel when the glass froze. The automated windows were locked. "What are you doing? I don't get it." By now, I had posed this inquiry 100 times, but each time, the anger in my words increased. "Richard, kindly respond to me. Will you simply continue doing this indefinitely? What are you looking for from me? How can I?" My right hand was crushed in the rolled-up window, and I felt a burning pain. When Richard hit the button on his door, I hadn't noticed it rising. I frantically attempted to get my fingers loose.
Hey, Richard! Stop! Please, open the window!
As the man I loved smiled back at me, I was staring at him with tears in my eyes and my mouth hanging open in fear. Before I fainted from the agony shooting through my arm, that smile was the last thing I saw. My hand was free when I recovered consciousness, but the words, "No, no, 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 no," were written in smudged red characters on the window. Other vehicles have been on the route. I had been desperately attempting to get their attention. I'd bang on anything I can get to. I yell, I wave. I reached for the paper map of the East Coast that Richard liked to keep in the back seat, my hand still sore. I had underlined places I thought we'd like with tiny stars and highlighted our path in pink. I searched for a pen in my purse. I dug large blue letters that said "Help" all over the map. I wiped the bloodied words to my right with the sleeve of my shirt and pressed the map to the glass. I begged someone to turn to look at us. I failed to attract anyone's attention. I began mentally counting the seconds that were going by. I made the decision to jump 5 minutes ago. Although the exits were locked, I could quickly press the unlock button and open the door in a few seconds. Even though I realized I had little chance of surviving and that we were moving too quickly, that constant smile is ingrained in my mind and eyes. I could think of no other way out. It must have been my greatest opportunity to escape. With my hands in my lap, I looked straight ahead, attempting to keep an eye out for any movement. My left hand came to rest over the seatbelt release as I moved my weight as if I were just readjusting my posture. I released the buckle and pressed down while feigning a heavy cough. Despite the loud click, Richard remained motionless. I felt optimistic, cautiously glancing at him as I pushed the seatbelt back against the car door. He grinned. He gazed. I could see those enormous pupils reflecting my face, grinning, gazing. My chest heaved with deep, nervous breaths, and I could see my wide eyes mirrored in his. My right hand grasped the door handle as I continued to look into his eyes. My pulse pounded with adrenaline as I clutched the icy metal. I mentally counted down. 3. A drop of perspiration trickled into my eye from my forehead. I attempted to blink away the sting. 2. I tightened my hold on the door handle, bracing my leg muscles for the impending jump. 1. Was Richard's mouth moving? I paused. Behind the fake smile and dilated pupils, was Richard still there? I heard the wind whistle by my ears as I threw my weight to the right and pushed the handle. My hair was flying in all directions. There was no end to time, so I gave Richard one last look. His new look was now unflinching as our eyes met. He made no attempt to stop me. I reclined. I closed my eyes and prepared to hit the asphalt while wearing only flimsy clothing. Whatever the twisted result, I was going to get out. I took a big breath to fill my lungs, like breaking through the water's surface after spending too much time underneath. I was in our vehicle, the same Richard, the same grin, same route, the same console is broken, the same unavoidable insanity. Right now, I'm attempting everything that comes to mind. I've attempted texting, but it never works. I've dialed all of the numbers stored on my phone. Hold on, all but one number. I tap the first number with my thumb to access my phone's favorites section. It rings. I'm in awe when I glance up at Richard's phone, resting on the cell phone holder on the car vent. It does not vibrate, light up, or do anything else. To make sure my phone is ringing the correct number, I pull it away. Richard's phone is connecting to mine. I carefully raise the phone to my ear once more. The ringing stops. My pals and I used to have a strange hobby in high school. We enjoyed stirring up trouble, just like any other adolescent miscreant. We weren't drug dealers, we weren't vandals, and we most definitely weren't school bullies. No. We enjoyed hacking new parents' baby monitors to make them feel really uneasy. We were annoying little pricks who believed that our small mischievous deeds would go unpunished because we were too good to be detected. However, I discovered one night that I wasn't as invincible as my enormous teenage ego had claimed. Kurt, Dimitri, and I attended the same school, took many of the same subjects, and spent nearly every evening after chow time together. We played computer games, watched prank shows, and debated who in the school had the best rack. We were exchanging spooky tales in the park one evening. Kurt told the well-known tale of the unmarried woman who, while watching her infant, heard a ghostly voice. It seemed like complete nonsense, as most horror stories do. But Dimitri assured us that it had happened to his mother once. She had heard a neighbor singing to her infant on her own monitor. It turned out that one could unintentionally tap into another person's frequency. A light bulb flicked on in each of our brains in an instant. We were all thinking the same thing. We were going to get a baby monitor and mess with folks. When you're near enough to someone, you don't need words to understand what they're thinking. I apologize for the joke, but it's easy to hack a baby monitor. Finding a gadget that uses the same frequency as you is all that is required. I'm never one to cut corners, so I bought a fancy monitor with a frequency slider so we could fool as many people as we could. The next evening, we rode our bikes around the neighborhood and discovered our first victim. From the second-story window of the suburban house, we could see the nursery. After grabbing the baby monitor, Dimitri started adjusting the frequency until we could hear respiration. I recall being thrilled when our plan eventually materialized. After pressing the button, Dimitri started to exhale deeply into the receiver. He whispered in a devilish voice, "Your little girl was delicious." Almost instantly, the master bedroom's light came on and we heard a high-pitched scream. We rode fast down the street to avoid being caught, laughing uncontrollably. Over the next few weeks, we pulled the prank multiple times, with each person speaking via the monitor in turn. We always picked various houses, since we didn't want anyone to figure out our little game. The responses from the public were invaluable. Some moms would respond in a panic, some appeared to recognize the prank and ordered us to stop talking. And one unfortunate woman even broke down in tears, pleading with us not to harm her child. That final one made me laugh at the time, but now that I'm older, I feel awful about it. For weeks thereafter, my friends and I imitated her high-pitched sobbing and frantic pleas for forgiveness. We were royal dicks, that's right. I got what I deserved one night, and karma is a bitch. I went out alone, since Kurt and Dimitri were occupied with their midterm preparation. We had almost everyone in the neighborhood by then, so I made the decision to move across town and into uncharted territory. It was easy to choose a target. You just needed to search for toys left in the yard, automobiles with baby seats, or homes with drapes with cartoon themes that were excessively bright. I put my bike out of sight when I saw a house that met all three requirements. I finally figured out the correct frequency by experimenting with the tuner. The faint snoring of a newborn was audible to me. A cunning little grin forced itself onto my lips, and my heart started to race with anticipation. I had the opportunity to shine. I used my creepiest voice to mutter, "I am watching," into the monitor. The house was still dead and black. I assumed I hadn't been heard by the homeowners. "I'm standing over your bed, watching, waiting, etc. I'll get you," I yelled, raising my voice. Nothing but the faint rumbling of a car going down the street and the chirping of crickets. It was a bit strange. Typically, parents responded far more quickly than that. I started to feel a little exposed and uneasy, like when you spot a stalker staring at you out of the blue. I had a long bike ride home and it was becoming late. I was about to quit up and walk away when the monitor made an odd, wet gurgling noise. I thought the baby had awakened up and was about to cry when the regular soft snores stopped. A man spoke to me instead. He whispered, "You're the one. Being watched now. One." He said something that made my stomach turn. How was my name known to him? I was ill. My bones told me that something was seriously wrong. I noticed a figure standing there, observing me when I looked up at the nursery window. Was he there the entire time? The air seemed heavy and hard to breathe. Yet maybe the anxiety was making it hard. I felt fear seeping into every part of me, and my body trembled violently. I got on my bike and pedaled frantically to escape. A part of me felt that I was exaggerating, but my logical thinking was overtaken by the overwhelming need to escape. "You can't run, I am aware of." Even as I turned the corner, the man went on. "Where do you live, Juan?" I continued to fly down the street until I came to a major boulevard. I felt secure because there were cars all around me and some late-night joggers. Through the baby monitor in my pocket, the man continued to mutter, "Your hoodie will run red, your blood boy." I yelled loudly in terror, nearly tearing my hoodie in my desperate haste to take it off, and a bystander gave me a harsh look. I must have appeared like some snobby kid tripping balls or something to the stranger. I wish he had offered to help me instead, but I don't blame him for leaving with an irritated huff because he didn't realize I was in real trouble. I saw my name scribbled on the back of the hoodie after shoving it into my backpack. That jerk knew my name since it was my fucking school jacket. Then I realized that I was clearly being followed because baby monitors were not very far away. I looked around anxiously, trying to see my stalker. Was it the van down the street that appeared to be empty? That man who takes his dog for a walk? The vehicle that had just passed? In any case, I turned off the device and began pedaling home, since I didn't want to hear that voice again. My senses were sharpened by fear, and I started to take in every movement of the trees in the wind, every sound of twigs beneath my wheels, and every passing automobile. I was terrified that whoever had been speaking to me on the baby monitor might catch up, so I cringed any time someone approached. Luckily, I arrived home without any problems. End quote. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom after parking the bike in my garage. I carelessly threw my backpack and the baby monitor into my room's corner and dove beneath my sheets like a swimmer at the Olympics. No matter your age, nothing feels more secure than curling up under your blanket. After closing my eyes in the hopes of calming down long enough to sleep for a few hours before class, I heard static emanating from the monitor on the other side of the room, a screen that was meant to be off. The voice that still haunts my nightmares whispered, "Sweet dreams, Juan." It goes without saying that I didn't get any sleep that night. I stayed in bed till dawn because I was too scared. I started by taking the monitor's battery out and throwing it in the garbage as soon as I woke up. I no longer wanted anything to do with it. To keep my friends from thinking I was a big pussy, I thought up an excuse. I ate breakfast, got ready, and headed to school with enormous bags under my eyes. I didn't see the house on the news until a few days later. The small family that had been residing in the residence was discovered in their beds with their necks sliced open, a police officer stated in an interview. The murderer chose to play with me after hearing me on the baby monitor while I was outside. I thanked my lucky stars that I hadn't been slain, since it was undoubtedly a wake-up call. I didn't feel sorry for the family that hadn't survived, because I was too busy being grateful that I had. Like wisdom, empathy develops with age. I genuinely see the repercussions of my actions and the gravity of the predicament I put myself in as a very foolish adolescent kid, now that I'm an adult with a wife and daughter. I believed I had reached the pinnacle of fear that terrible night, but it was only the beginning. As a father, I've learned that when something more valuable than your own life is at risk, anxiety grows and intensifies. It is the ill-conceived love of an adolescent boy carrying his mother on the tips of his fingernails. I'm not sure if the murderer has tracked me down again after all these years, or if a new generation of fools came up with the same notion as my pals and myself, but I can assure you that I now know what real dread is. I was paralyzed with a terror that I doubt will ever go away after hearing something on our baby monitor last night that chilled my very being.